Pitcher Nailed Down. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Nick Tasso at The Inefficient 2. Taking a look at Thursday pitchers for the 7 o'clock and later games, and we actually have some decent arms on the hill, which is a nice surprise for this Thursday slate. So really jumping right into things, you got the Blue Jays and the Orioles, 7:05 kicking things off, over-under of 9. Marco Estrada's come out hot this season. Has kind of put those left-handers to bed to really start the year, and that has been a struggle so far. It's in Camden Yards. Estrada is an intriguing GPP play just because Baltimore does have a high strikeout rate, but overall, it'll probably be one that I fade just going into this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I can only consider him on DraftKings where his price is almost $2,000 less. So, I mean, FanDuel, he's way out of contention, 8,700. You can't pay up that much for him. But at 6,800, he's not too bad. And like you said, the Orioles, I think they've been slowing down a little bit offensively. And Adam Jones, I think he left again last night, so he's not doing too well. But there is some upside here. He can strike a few guys out. He's only faced the Red Sox twice this year, no one else. So it'll be interesting to see how he faces someone other than the Red Sox. And he looked pretty good in his first outing against the Red Sox, but the second time around he gave up 4 runs. But again, that was after them already seeing him once.
Yeah, definitely. And, it does have the upside and, of course, price comparison. That's really where the big topic is with him, just because he's not really an option on FanDuel. But on the other side, Chris Tillman, he's a guy I don't want any part of going up against this Jays team, even though Tillman's had a little bit of success early on here. He started to look like Tillman of old in his last start, so I'll probably fade him as well.
I agree with you there. The Blue Jays, they've struck out at a good rate, I think top 3 or so, but it's just they have so much power, and if he misses a few spots, it could be over pretty quickly for your fantasy team. There could be a lot of negatives there.
Yeah, and there's just some better options, cheaper, that are in safer spots than this one.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, next game here, Athletics and Yankees, Rich Hill versus Luis Severino. Over-under of 8.5. The Yankees are favorites. You look at this A's team, they're kind of more pesky than anything. Still not a good offense. I'm still not a big fan of taking teams against or in Yankee Stadium as far as pitching goes, especially with all those A's left-handed bats. All they have to do is just poke one out down to the right field line there, and it's a homer. Severino, an interesting play, but once again, I just don't think he has a ton of upside in this matchup against the A's. And I just think price considered, there's guys around there that I prefer a little bit more.
Yeah, Severino's strikeouts, he hasn't had too many so far this year, and he's been giving up a lot of runs, and he just hasn't really gone deep into games, so I'm probably fading him here as well. Rich Hill kind of is interesting just because the Yankees have so many lefties, and we've seen A-Rod struggle for most of the year, as well as Teixeira. He doesn't really hit lefties too well anymore. And Hill hasn't been too bad. I mean, the first start, he only went 2 2/3, but that was because it was a spot start with Sonny Gray missing the openers, and he was still able to get 3 punch-outs that game. And then the 2 games after that, I believe he had 10 strikeouts and 6. And that 6 strikeouts was only in 4 1/3 innings. So the strikeout rate has been there. Just his durability and him actually trying to get batters out is the issue.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it last year with the Red Sox. He had a couple starts towards the end of the year, and he was striking out double-digit guys. And that swinging strike rate is still there this year, which is kind of, it makes him look a little bit more intriguing. 11.1% strikeout rate. I mean, you go back over the last 7 starts or so, it's a K percentage of 30. So it does kind of put him in GPP territory for me. I think it'd be an interesting one if you're building multiple lineups. 3.22 FIP on the year, so he's been pretty solid there. He has a decent ground ball rate over the last I'm kind of combining, at the end of last season and this year to where he's kind of really found himself. And, the Yankees are a team that do shift their lineup around when lefties take the hill. But, yeah, they are predominantly left-handed. Their switch hitters go to the right side where they're a little bit less effective. He is an underdog, but overall I think this is an intriguing GPP play.
Yeah, absolutely. And only to know that the Yankees are bottom five or top five technically in strikeout rate. So they're really not even striking out at a high percentage this year. So that's one thing to note that he might, if he doesn't get the strikeouts, he's kind of going to be worthless.
Yeah, and he may be limiting your runs at times, but still, he's not going deep into games. There's a big risk if you're taking Hill in any format.
Yeah, definitely just GPPs. I couldn't imagine him in
Oh,
cash.
yeah. Next one here, you got Cubs and Reds. Jake Arrieta against Brandon Finnegan. Over under a 7. Cubs heavy favorites at -190. Arrieta by far the top option on the night for me. He's just been dominant. You got this Reds offense that really isn't too good. They've had their moments so far this season, but overall, it's a lineup that Arrieta, I'm just expecting him to dominate.
Yeah, absolutely. He should really be in all of the lineups in this matchup here. And like you said, they have kind of pesky hitters, Cincinnati, but no one who really kind of scares you. The only one would be Joey Votto, and he has just not looked very good at all at the plate. So I definitely like Arrieta, and his price tag is not too bad. It's only 11,100 on DraftKings, so it's kind of relative. And I think he should be able to rack up the Ks pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, you look at him, 11.1% strikeout or swinging strike rate going back to last year, 27% K percentage. So overall, I mean, this Reds team does have a 20% strikeout rate against right-handers. Although the ballpark factors are against him, he's a guy who has a solid ground ball rate, 56.2%. Like he limits homers. So I'm just paying up for him in cash games. I don't see any other way of doing it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to go drop down anywhere on this slate. And then you look at the other side with Finnegan. He's relatively cheap, and he pitched well. What was the no hitter through 5 or 6 against the Cubs last time he faced
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
So I mean, he has an upside, and I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards him just because of that. But I'm staying away from him because it's at the Great American Ballpark, and I don't want any part of a mediocre pitcher in that ballpark.
Yeah, I think, if it was in a different spot, you might be looking at him as being like an SP2 because that price tag is 6,400. The Reds are unlikely to get a win, but you're not necessarily looking at him to get a win at that price tag on DK. It's just 4 points. He's not playable on FanDuel for me. I think he is a risk play. I think I'd rather roll and just pay up for my pitchers tonight. I don't think I'll be able to dive down in cash games, even with him maybe throwing a quality start, but I'm not even going to risk it.
Yeah, and you look at the same kind of premise with Estrada seeing the Red Sox twice. This will be the Cubs seeing Finnegan twice, and relatively new pitcher. They really probably didn't have much video on him, so now that they've seen him in real life, they probably are going to score a lot of runs off of him.
Yeah, I mean, now you're in Great American Ballpark. Finnegan struggled a little bit against left-handers, so a guy like Rizzo can handle lefties pretty well. I'm looking for him to do some damage. So, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I'm going to be staying away from him.
I agree.
Next one, we got Tigers and Royals over under of 9. Mike Pelfrey, Edison Volquez. KC strong favorites here, -161. Pelfrey has pitched decent so far to start the way, but no way I can roster him against this Royals team that really doesn't strike out a ton. They just kind of beat you into the ground as a pitcher. They make you work. Usually you're not getting much upside against this team. Volquez, on the other hand, probably still leaning towards staying away from him, but intriguing just because the Tigers have such a high strikeout rate this year.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Pelfrey, and he's going up against Royals, who have the lowest strikeout rate. So that's just one I'm crossing off. I know his price tag on DK is silly; it's only 4,700, but you really can risk it in this spot, especially Kansas City, who, like you were speaking earlier, just pesky hitters, and they'll kind of pop one here or there, but for the most part, they're station to station. And then
Yeah.
Volquez, I'm just kind of scared about his walks. I think he had five or six last game out, and he just can get pretty wild. And I know that Detroit, like you said, is striking out a little bit more than usual, but I mean, it's still Detroit, and they still got pretty good hitters with Cabrera, JD Martinez, Victor Martinez, and Upton, even Kinsler. And I don't like attacking this game at all.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. We can pretty much gloss over that one when you're looking at pitchers. This next one, 8:05, Astros and Rangers. Dallas Keuchel versus AJ Griffin. Houston, decent favorites here, minus 153. Keuchel is an interesting GPP play for me, um, just because he has a solid ground ball percentage, does have a decent strikeout rate. You're looking at the ballpark factors being against him. Obviously, Texas is a good offense at times. They do have a 22% strikeout rate, which is the 11th highest in the league against Southpaws going back to last year. Um, you're looking at Keuchel. I mean, over 5 starts last year, he did have 39 strikeouts against his team in 33 innings, but struggled a little bit here in global life. But still, I think he is a swerve that you can make off of Cole and Arrieta up top.
Yeah, see, I kind of agree with you there, but I'm just scared about his history here at Globe Life. 7.14 ERA, and it's the Rangers offense isn't that good this year. They've had a lot of injuries, but I just think it's something a little risky. And if I'm gonna pay up for a starter, I'd probably pay up for Arrieta. I'm just not a fan of Keuchel in this ballpark, and the ball's been flying out of here, so I'm staying away from this one. But on the other side, I kind of like AJ Griffin. He doesn't really have much upside on strikeouts, but the Astros are the third highest in striking out this year. That's pretty usual for the Astros. And you look at Pelfrey. Pelfrey was able to strike out a bunch of them last time out. So I think there's a little bit of upside. I like him more on FanDuel just because he's 6,200 compared to 72. And the OBP for the Astros this year really hasn't been that good. It's only been 290, had a WOBA of 305. So they're really not hitting as well as they have in the years past, but it's still kind of a risky thing with AJ Griffin.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you're looking at this one. I think there are going to be some runs scored. Obviously, Vegas thinks so too. Over under a 9. And as you mentioned, the balls have been flying out. We've seen that with visiting teams and the Rangers so far. The one good thing is Keuchel does keep the ball on the ground. He has the highest ground ball rate on the slate. But yeah, I think Griffin's intriguing just because of Houston's strikeout percentage against right-handers. But yeah, I mean, there's 2 arms tonight, and it's Cole and Arrieta, and I still think in all formats it's hard for me to get away from them, even in GPPs, just because there's enough value on the slate to pair your hitters up with them.
Yeah.
Next one here, you got the last game of the night, Pirates and Padres. Garrett Cole against James Shields. Over under 6.5. Pittsburgh favorites by minus 141. Cole, I think he's a solid arm tonight. Obviously, hasn't had 2 great starts to start the year, going up against the Tigers and the Reds team that always seems to give him trouble out there in years past. So I'm not really too concerned with him. Everything's kind of around the career norm. I'm not really worried. They are strong favorites. Obviously, it's in Petco. This guy keeps the ball in the park. He keeps the ball on the ground. A decent strikeout rate. He's going to be helped out by this Padres offense. So he comes in as my number 2 guy behind Arrieta tonight.
Yeah, Cole, he's a little bit different than Liriano because he's a righty, so he won't get roughed up as bad as Liriano kind of did. And I think Cole, because he is a righty, he's going to be able to really take advantage of this really weak San Diego team. Small ballpark, and I just think I really don't see him having a bad game at all. I mean, he might give up a couple runs, and he hasn't looked like his old self of last year, but I think this might be the game where he kind of turns it around.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And yeah, Liriano, I mean, he was all over the place. Cole's always been kind of a consistent guy as far as walk rate. Hasn't been too bad. 2.50 FIP this year compared to that 4.22 ERA. So been a little bit unlucky to start the year. I don't see any real issues with him. That kind of makes me think something might be up. On the other side, you looking at James Shields at all?
Not really. I mean, Shields can get a little risky because he can't really control the ball well. Sometimes when he does, he kind of gives up a lot of home runs. Pirates are third in walk rate this year, so I think it's a bad kind of combination for James Shields. I think there's a chance he does well because it is the Pirates, and even though they aren't the best team, they can still kind of get a couple hits here and there and pinch hit home run by Joyce, and Jaso leads off. It's a weird bunch of hitters, and sometimes it just clicks, and it's there's no real words to kind of put on this Pirates team to understand them. It's just like the Misfit. You remember that Christmas movie, the
Yeah,
Misfit toys? That's what I feel like they are this year. It's just not a normal offense, but somehow they get it done. They have David Freese hitting third, and I'm staying away.
yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. And this Pirates offense is weird because, I mean, as you mentioned, you got Marte McCutcheon, kind of your quality bats, but then it's guys like Josh Harrison, Francisco Cervelli, as you mentioned, Freeze hitting third. It's a lineup that you would expect to kind of produce, but they're more average than not.
Yeah, and for a guy like James Shields, who he can be average himself, it's just a bad combination because you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, definitely, I definitely agree with you, and I just think Cole Arrieta's the way to go. Who would you like as your favorite GPP arm? Not out of those names.
Um, Probably would be AJ Griffin just because of the potential strikeout rate with the Astros.
Yeah, I can
I,
definitely see
I don't
that.
like the ballpark, but I mean, especially on FanDuel at 6,200, you get a lot of savings there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. And as you mentioned, Keuchel's struggles in global life could create some run support for him there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do kind of like Rich Hill because when he has pitched, his strikeout rate has been really good. But it's kind of hard because you never know how long he's going to go, and you never know with the Yankee offense if they're going to be on or not.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there.
So
So
that's why they call it GPPs
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
chances.
you can take some risk, and there are plenty of risky arms down low, mainly with those left-handers to really take a look at. So that's going to wrap it up with the pitcher nail down. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.